Horrid Henry and Moody Margret have one of the most well-known rivalries ever, but there's a theory that the two enemies are secretly in love. From visions of being married to downright admitting it, this is the Horrid Henry love theory. The first instance which brings light to this theory is an episode called Horrid Henry the Bogey Braid Sleepover. The episode starts with Margret holding up limited tickets for her legendary BGL sleepovers. While all the girls gather around Margret to get an invitation to this girls only sleepover, rude Ralph walks by and asks Moody Margret what BGL even stands for, to which Margret angrily responds with "boys get lost." Soon after, everybody gets into class. Henry, being his classic self, is late for school and runs to get to class on time. On his way to the classroom, he runs into Ralph, who first tells him that Henry will be in big trouble for being late. Ralph then asks him if the rumors about him attending this sleepover that is for girls only is true. Henry's confused and in response saying no. Ralph said he's heard this from other people around the school, and Henry's visibly annoyed. Once Henry gets to class, the teacher tells him to get his reading book out. To his surprise, in the reading book, he finds an invitation to these BGL sleepovers. The card ends with "no boys allowed," leaving Henry confused as to why he would receive this. Henry scrunched up the card and threw it at Margaret's head, causing Miss Battleaxe to pick it up off the floor and read what it says. This causes Henry to obviously be embarrassed. Miss Battleaxe, being nosy in others' business, tells Henry to think of attending the sleepover as his homework and to report back to class the next day on how it went.
You are invited. Whoa! Think of it as your homework, Henry.
What do you mean?
Well, tonight, Henry, you're going to be an honorary girl. And you can tell us all about it tomorrow. If you survive that long, Henry.
This scene raises the question about how Henry ended up having an invitation to Margaret's girls only sleepover in the first place. And why was there rumors around the school about Henry attending this sleepover if Henry himself didn't even know he was invited? Not to mention how Margret acted whenever Ralph asked, but didn't even protest the idea of Henry being invited. After school, Henry is sitting at the dining table annoyed at the fact he has to go to Margaret's sleepover. Henry's mom excitedly packs snacks from the shirt the girls, which only makes him more annoyed. Regardless, he picks up his 2 bags of snacks and leaves his house at his mom's command. Henry then enters the enemy territory from a secret entrance into Margaret's house. As he walks up to Margaret's house, her mom opens the door to greet Henry, and as Henry enters Margaret's room, they immediately start bickering. Soon after, Margret orders her parents to bring pizza to her sleepover for everyone. Meanwhile, Margret and her friends start to play music that Henry deems not sleepover worthy. And while everyone is hitting jigs, Henry sits alone, annoyed that he has to even be here. Once Margaret's parents bring in the pizza and set them on the table which the music was played on, which was way too loud, the table starts to wobble, causing the pizzas to fall over, but to everyone's luck, Henry was there and saved all the pizzas. This heroic scene shows Henry's care for Margret and her sleepover, which was very dear to her. And even due to all her bickering, he still helps her out. The episode ends with Henry pulling out his own music and played it for the Huzz, which they all dance to, showing that Henry and Margret can really get along if they try. In another instance, in an episode called Perfect Peter's Revenge, Peter, Henry's younger goody two-shoes brother, seeks a way to get revenge on Henry's behavior towards him. Peter realizes the perfect way to get his revenge would be to send a false love letter from Henry to Moody Margret. This was a critical scene that shows the image of Henry and Margaret's relationship in front of others. Peter and his friends spend the entire day on the computer, making a perfect love letter from Henry to Margret. Peter and his friends proceed to the backyard to wrap their love letter onto an apple and then aim for Margaret's treehouse. As the apple with the love letter flies into Margaret's treehouse and hits her head, she instantly opens the letter to read it.
Dear Margret, I love you. Will you marry me? Signed, Henry? What? Ooh-wee. Oh.
Margret instantly tries to perfect herself, getting flattered at the idea of her and Henry being together. But Peter and his friends throw another love letter, but this time to Susan. And once Margret finds out about this, she instantly gets mad. This episode really highlights Margaret's want of getting Henry's attention. Even though Henry didn't write the letter himself, Margaret's happiness after reading the letter clearly shows her deep feelings towards Henry and even her possessiveness of him, trying to keep him all to herself. Moving on, in an episode called Horrid Henry Gets Married, Henry and Peter are seen plotting to steal Margaret's biscuit jar from her backyard. After messing up a few times, Henry is able to steal the jar and run away, going through the fence. Perfect Peter is supposed to hold up the fence gate but fails his job, causing Henry to fall fall and get knocked out. Once Henry re-enters consciousness, he's older, and in this life, he's living with Margret. He questions why Margret looks so old, and we find out that there was 20 years in the future with Margret being 27. Henry questions where he is when Margret responds by saying this.
How did I get here? Where am I anyway? Oh, don't be horrid, Henry. You know very well this is our house. You mean your house? I mean the house we're going to live in when we're married.
Henry's in mere disbelief, and his dream continues to have him meet up with his mom, dad, and perfect prenup, who are all older and have their own lives and goals. Did I mention Henry and Margret also have a baby in this life? Why would you envision yourself marrying someone and having a kid with them if you didn't even like them? Henry then has another dream where he and Moody Margret are getting married now. As Margret says "I do," he hesitates. He then slips and falls and starts to see stars, and he wakes up to his real life. Even though he doesn't actually get married to Margret, the entire dream is based on building a life with her, from buying a house to spending quality time with her. This clearly shows Henry's rivalry with Margret isn't everything it seems to be, and he has a deeper desire towards her. Before I talk about the final instance, let's talk about Phantom Phone, an episode where Margret begs Henry to put his phone number into his phone. The episode begins with Horrid Ralph getting a cell phone, and he and Henry are playing a video game on it. When they enter class, Henry, Moody, Margret start arguing until Miss Battleaxe arrives, causing the whole class to fall asleep. And whenever the bell rings, they run out of class. Everyone is excited about Ralph's phone, and Henry proves to be highly skilled at the game he's playing. However, Margret misinterprets the situation. Believing that Henry wants her contacts saved in his phone, determined to find out what's going on, Margret chases Henry around, leading to chaos and results in the classroom being absolutely destroyed. Henry ends up in detention because of this, and Margret eventually discovers that Henry wasn't trying to get her contact, it was just watching Gross Class 0. Ironically, she gets caught with her own phone, which is confiscated, landing her in detention as well. Henry continues playing on their phone while they wait for the principal, and whenever they're called into the office, an argument breaks out because Henry refuses to add Margaret's contact.
What do you have to say to that, Henry?
Why would I want to add a bogey brain like her? You see? Who does he think he is? Not a bogey brain like you, obviously. Who are you calling bogey brain?
The principal then confiscates both of their phones. After school, whenever Ralph and Henry are walking home, Ralph asks for his phone back, and Henry asks if he can borrow it for an extra day, and Ralph says fine. Henry brings in Peter's toy phone the next day as a decoy. As Margret attempts to expose him for having a fake phone, he runs to the principal's office and switches it out for Ralph's. This episode shows just how much Margret actually likes Henry, doing anything to get a chance to talk to him in private. And if you weren't convinced already that the two chaotic rivals had a deeper secret connection, this will be the nail in the coffin for the Horrid Henry love theory. The King and Queen of Horrid is an episode on the podcast where Henry and Margret want to rule the kingdom as King and Queen of Horrid together. This episode really shows how Margret and Henry actually have a soft spot for each other despite all the bickering that takes place between the two. When Henry and Margret are given the position of King and Queen of the kingdom, the first thing they do is argue who will have more power as the ruler. Though this argument involves Henry and Margret fighting to assert this dominance over each other in their kingdom, their dynamic appears to be more teasing banter and playful arguments rather than an actual fight. Throughout the episode, they navigate their way through challenges of ruling their kingdom